Welcome to the content talk on accommodations and modifications. This content talk will be very critical to understanding and strengthening teaching practices geared towards accommodating materials, space, engagement patterns, and activities in order to make them accessible and full participation and the correct supports for children with special needs and without special needs. Accommodations and modifications are particularly important for children with special needs. Modifications are used only when children have specific IEP goals that need to be modified. In this content talk, participants will be able to define curriculum accommodations and consider when and why they are useful. Let's start with accommodations. What are curriculum accommodations? Why are they needed? When are they needed? A curriculum accommodation is a change to the classroom activity or materials in order to facilitate or maximize a child's participation in planned activities, interactions, and routines. Curriculum accommodations do not significantly alter the content, scope, or sequence of the curriculum. A curriculum accommodation is a small change that can make a powerful impact on children's participation, sense of belonging, and opportunity to learn. An accommodation is most effective when the child is interested but not fully participating in one or more of the classroom activities, interactions, or routines. This may be the result of a physical impairment, a developmental need, a communication barrier, or simply because the child is unmotivated by the way the activity or interactions or routine is inviting them in to participate. In some cases, that would be that the child's interest is lacking. In these situations, accommodations such as child preference, adult support, and peer support can be designed to spark interest so that the child can take full advantage of the learning opportunity. Use curriculum accommodations when all elements of the foundation are secure, when the child is interested but still not fully participating, before moving on to more intensive, individualized instruction. Let's take a look at this video. This video will animate about adult support. The teacher uses modeling to support Sonia's participation in the dramatic play area and then quickly fades her support in order to promote Sonia's independence.
Here are some children playing grocery store during free choice in the dramatic play area. Just as the teacher had hoped, 3 of the children are playing creatively, taking on roles and enjoying one another.
Oh wait, we forgot the apples.
My mom says apples are good for you. Do you eat apples at your house?
Yes, I do.
Sonia, however, is struggling. Usually she doesn't even go to the dramatic play area, but today she notices how much fun the other kids are having. She wants to be a part of it, but she doesn't know how. Watch as her teacher steps in to offer Sonia support.
Hi, Sonia. It looks like we need someone to bag the groceries. Watch me. Thank you, Tasha. Come again soon. Now you try it.
Thank you, and I'll come again soon. Can I go shopping this time?
Sonia now has the opportunity to successfully interact and learn with her peers through play. Here are some children playing grocery store during free choice.
Teachers work hard to develop lessons that get each child individually actively involved in learning. Even with the most thoughtful lesson plans and well-structured classrooms, Some children still struggle to participate or to maximize their potential. Simple accommodations to the curriculum can help children access these activities and routines and eventually help them progress. More specifically, teachers who accommodate activities and materials based on individual needs and strengths ensure that children are not bound by a single way of participating. Successful learning can then take place in a variety of ways. Through access and participation, children are able to increase their learning. Accommodations provide access to planned activities, interactions, and routines. It's really important to understand that all children may need this kind of accommodation where we recognize that their interest, their motivation to learn may not be there because the activity is highly teacher-directed or highly removed from the child's cultural knowledge or the context of the real world. And so therefore, anytime we are working to help all children fully participate and increase their learning, we will consider these features of inclusion. Increased access leads to higher level of participation, and participating in a meaningful way provides a greater opportunity for learning. Think about a child who is in your classroom or a child you've observed in some of your practicum settings. Think about a child who struggles to participate in a classroom activity or routine, such as morning arrival, small group time, playtime, maybe cleanup or meals. What simple strategies have you tried that works? It's important to think about children who are dual language learners, children who show that their development is advanced from the typical developmental continuum, as well as children who are struggling to learn. All children need us to think about curriculum accommodations. Curricular accommodations are usually simple and easy to implement. They don't take a great deal of valuable teacher time or money to put them into place, so the teacher and student can gain a lot with little effort or resource expenditure. Common classroom materials usually can be used with a little bit of creativity. In some cases, more than one accommodation is beneficial to a child to help them participate fully in an activity, routine, or interaction. Using multiple accommodations in this way is easy to do and is a real simple way to do it. Many teachers are already using modifications, but they may not realize there is a name for teaching, that there is a name for this teaching strategy. The point is, using accommodations can be very empowering to teachers because that's when we see children at their best and really excited about learning, and they feel a sense of confidence and they feel a sense of membership with group. They're simple, but they're intentional strategies. Curriculum accommodations are simple but need to be planned and implemented in an intentional way for the greatest impact. If a child needs more support or more challenge, it takes thoughtful planning to identify the most appropriate curriculum modifications and accommodations based on the individual needs of the child. Once you identify one or more accommodations, you can plan for implementation. Deliberate implementation offers the child consistent opportunities to participate at their highest level. When well planned and used intentionally, curriculum accommodations often have an immediate impact on the child's level of participation. This allows teachers to take prompt decisions regarding the effectiveness of the strategies they have implemented. By intentionally modifying curriculum for children, teachers increase children's opportunities to learn. Thoughtful, planning, and deliberate. Now let's take a look at this video.
One of the things that we're always trying to do is to help children be more successful, be more independent, and also be able to participate fully in the classroom activities. So curriculum modifications allow children to do that.
We think they work. They work well with lots of children. They're simple. They make the activities more interesting for everyone.
The benefit of curriculum modifications for teachers and for young children is that it helps a child to access the early learning environments, to increase their participation in those early learning environments, and to learn more efficiently and more effectively.
It's basically a change to the environment or the materials or the way you're providing instruction that enable someone to participate in that activity more fully.
Oftentimes teachers think, well, this child is not participating, this isn't working for this child, what am I going to do? And they think of very elaborate changes to the activity, or I need to teach him something different, or I need to go out and get a different curriculum or a different set of materials. And we think that maybe the first response should be, well, is there something inherent in this activity or in this material that I could change just a little bit? Could I make it bigger? Could I make it more stable? Could I make it visual?
It really is going to work pretty efficiently and pretty effectively right away if it's going to work. So things like putting a visual schedule in place in your classroom, that has a huge impact really quickly if that's going to work for a child. If it doesn't work right away, then you can move on to the next thing.
You know, one of the curriculum modifications I like to use as an example are carpet squares during circle time.
Find your spots, my friends. Mohammed, your spot is right over here, hon.
You know, carpet squares during circle time really have nothing to do with circle time, but the reason we use them is to help teach children where they should sit, where their body should be, how much space they have. If I have a child who has a hard time with writing or drawing because they can't, manage holding their paper down while drawing, I can tape their paper to the table. Makes it easier. Very simple. If I have a child who can't manage scooping things out of a bowl, I can make sure that they don't go first so it's not quite so full. If I have a child who has a hard time learning how to put things away, I can make sure that there are pictures or photographs showing them where things go. So I can set up the environment to help the child be as successful as possible. It helps equalize them in the eyes of their peers. So I think it really helps improve their confidence and competence while allowing them to participate fully in the classroom and as a full member of the classroom.
There are a variety of ways that classroom activities and routines can be accommodated and adapted. It's really important to note right here on this slide, it says modifications. Some different states refer to accommodations and modifications differently. In the state of Missouri, accommodations is exactly what we're talking about here. So I apologize, I should have caught that. It should be accommodations. Modifications that we're going to talk about next is when you actually change the learning target. Sometimes for children with special needs, we have to change the end goal. Their goal may look different than the typical goals of everyone else in the classroom. That's when there's a modification. Something about the scope of the curriculum has changed. Here we're just talking about ways that we adapt, ways that we change what we do as teachers to help give access and participation to the learner. So there are environmental supports that we are going to talk about, materials and adaptations, simplifying the activity, which means we're going to break it down step by step. Still going to have the same goal, we're just going to get it in incremental ways. So maybe we have 2 or 3 activities to get to that end goal. Specialized equipment may be needed. The special equipment typically is going to involve an accommodation or a modification. Adult support, peer support, and then finally invisible support. And we'll talk about each one of these within different content talks. These general categories were established to give teachers a way to organize what can at first glance seem like a lot of information, but they're helpful to understand the specific adaptation or accommodation that is getting used. Material adaptation. When we modify the materials so that children can participate independently, this is a materials accommodation. So for example, in photo 1, stickers are placed at the tip of the pencil so that a child who is beginning to move from a palm grip to a tripod grasp, or as we call it, pincer grasp, that the child can make a finger position more obvious. They can see it. I would also add that you can add some of the triangle grips, some of the circular grips right to the pencil. That would be a material adaptation. And then go to the sticker. So the more strong material adaptation would be to add the actual rubber gripper that you can put on pencils and other pens. For a child who struggles with turning the pages, such as on the Fun with Animals book, you can put popsicle sticks glued to the pages to make the page easier to turn. In photo 3, a child with an IEP goal is learning to improve self-feeding skills. And so this bowl is adapted. It's an adapted bowl. The suction at the base keeps the bowl in place while the child learns to manage utensils for the first time. So in the third picture here, that might be more of something that goes with either an accommodation or a modification of an IEP goal. Teachers work hard to develop lessons that get each individual child actively involved in learning. Even with the most thoughtful lesson plans and well-structured classrooms, some children will still struggle to participate or maximize. So simple accommodations to the curriculum, such as adapting materials, can help. Teachers who adapt these activities and materials based on individual needs and strengths ensure that they are not bound by a single way of participating. Successfully learning can take place in a variety of ways. Remember that access and participation increases learning. Accommodations provide access to the planned activities, interactions, and routines. Increased access leads to increased participation in a meaningful way, which provides a greater. There are 4 strategies to consider when adapting materials to increase a child's access and participation. Place materials or equipment in the optimal position for a child. This might mean putting materials within reach by lowering a piece of equipment or arranging paper vertically instead of horizontally. So instead of laying paper on a table, stand it up, tape it to a wall. You might need to stabilize materials. This could be as simple as putting an extra large piece of paper, using fasteners such as paper clips, tape, etc. Sometimes a skill or response is just too difficult for a child, such as tying a shoe. When you modify the response you're asking for, it's easier for a child to use materials independently. So a child might fasten shoes with Velcro rather than with shoelaces. Materials are larger or brighter are helpful in 2 ways. Large materials may just be easier for little hands to use. For children with visual impairments, large print is easier to see. Bright materials can attract the attention of a child who's previously had little interest in an area. Be careful with how much bright materials, however, that you're using in your classroom. You don't want to use crazy borders with all sorts of different bright colors on, bright colored background, bright color carpet. If everything does that, then we minimize having children focusing in on instructional activities. Now we're going to look at several clips to illustrate the strategies of adapting materials.
The preschool classroom environment has so much to offer a child. The art area, dramatic play, science, and much more. How well are the children in your classroom able to reach the toys they want to play with and materials they need to use? Are they able to complete routines independently? When you place materials at the optimal position for a child, on the floor, on a shelf, or on an easel, you are making a modification that encourages independent participation. Can you think of a particular child in your classroom that would benefit from the use of this strategy? Another strategy that helps children participate more independently is to stabilize. Watch as this teacher uses tape in 2 different ways.
Here, I'll show you a good way. If we tape it on here like this, then you can draw it on there, and then we can take this off, and then your picture will be on there, and that way you won't have to hold it. This is different. This is different because you have to trace around it. So how can we keep this on here? I need some ideas. What do you think? How can we get this to stay on there, but we can't put tape on the outside? How can we do it? Put it on the inside? I have a neat trick that I'll show you. But I'll need you guys to say dun 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 dun. Here goes. I got this. Dun 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 dun. There you go. You're helping me out there. See, I'll put it like this, and now it's sticky all the way around, and I'll put it right on his nose. Watch this. This is really cool. Can I get a dun 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 dun? Thank you. And then I'll put one on his hand. Put it on his other hand. Dun 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 dun. Maybe I'll put one on his toes. Yep, got it right here. Grab another one, rip it off. Dun 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 dun. And I'll put it right there. So I'll let you put this on and I'll hold it for you, okay? That way you can put it wherever you want it. Right in the middle. There you go. You did it. We did it. Finger bumps. Boop. Thank you for your ideas. Boop. There you go. Now you can get your marker and go around.
You can also secure materials by making small changes. Clamping, fastening, and pinning. These small changes stabilize materials and help a child participate more independently. Can you think of a child who might benefit from stabilizing materials? Painting is a familiar preschool classroom activity. Many children participate with enthusiasm. Some love getting their hands messy, or even their feet, but others do not. For a child who is reluctant to touch messy materials, try modifying the response. Introduce a sponge, or even a puzzle piece with a knob. This helps the child get involved and have fun too. Do you have a child in mind that can participate more fully if you modify the response? Making materials larger and brighter attract children and help them attend to important information for learning. Numbers written in bright yellow help identify the even numbers. Large foam shapes emphasize corners and sides in a rectangle.
Called
Rectangle.
Let's count the sides with MD. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Materials with high visual contrast make it easier to see. In this case, dots on a card. Some materials in an area might not attract a child's interest. This limits opportunities to explore, participate, and learn. Think about removing excess visual clutter and adding unusual materials. Do you know of a child who might benefit from materials that are large or bright?
Next, we'll think about how we simplify the activity. Simplifying a complicated task by breaking it down into smaller parts and reducing the number of steps is a way that we can accommodate. In photo 1, this activity asks children to make an A-B pattern. A child who isn't yet able to make the pattern is only asked to cut and glue the circles into the caterpillar outline. A child who needs more challenge could be asked to make more complex patterns or write a story. I'm even going to suggest beyond this type of what feels like a very rote teacher-directed activities, Give children blocks, give children Unifix cubes, have children work on patterns within their normal everyday environment versus having them have to do it in this very teacher-directed way. Have you ever seen a red and blue caterpillar that looks just like that? In the photo 2, a child is getting overwhelmed by too many pieces in a bucket. The teacher helps the child with the first several pieces, and then the child is expected to only place the last pieces independently. This will help the child gradually be able to put more important pieces together independently. So you're simplifying it. For a child who does not engage in appropriate activities in a listening center, a visual direction is posted with simple, clear steps defined. Get the headphones, get the book, sit down, and listen. Activities and tasks often require multiple steps and can be confusing for some children. These strategies can help simplify an activity, breaking it down, changing or reducing the number of steps, and finishing with success. When an activity or a task is complicated, it's helpful to break it down into smaller, more manageable parts. One of your assignments for this course is to do a task analysis or break it down. You'll select an everyday type of activity or routine that children would normally do, like brushing your teeth. You'll break it down into steps so that the activity may be completed independently. It's helpful to think about this by breaking it down and then trying to have someone else see if they can follow those steps step by step. Let's observe some children to see how an activity can be broken down. Once you determine the steps and sequence that you may use to illustrate the steps, then you've created a sequence chart. The sequence chart for hand washing, for example, can be placed above the sink in the restroom or the art area. This will be handy when the child needs extra assistance. This video will illustrate how to break down one task, making toast. Perhaps you can think of examples when you've broken down an activity into smaller steps to help increase the child's or to increase their capabilities to reach those goals. Some children need the steps changed, however. A child with a physical disability may not be able to hold the toast and spread the butter, for example. Simplify the steps by changing it to child spreads the butter while the teacher holds the bread. For some, the change can be a permanent adaptation, while for other children, an altered step can be changed over time back to the original step. Reduce the number of required steps is another approach. Participation is increased when children can complete steps 1 and 2. Gradually increase the number of steps as the child becomes more competent. And then you can have the whole sequence. sequence included. Finish with success is a strategy to use with tasks or activities that are long or complicated. The teacher completes or helps the child on every step except the last two. Over time, the teacher increases the number of steps with the child, and the child can be independent. Child's preferences. When we identify and integrate children's preferences into activities routines, we are able to help the child take more full advantage of the learning opportunity. That may mean thinking about what are the child's favorite things. What kinds of materials is the child drawn to in the classroom? Or what might be a learning topic that would be interesting for them to learn? This might be a good time for me to talk to you about a video clip we watched earlier. There's some things in that video I'd want to caution you about. It's the video where we looked at different types of large and bright materials. And in that video, we saw examples of number cards, of highlighted letter cards. We can help children learn through meaningful, real objects, props, and artifacts, and they will learn in a much greater capacity by using those things versus creating essentially what looks like flashcards for preschoolers. So just really be cautioned about the kinds of materials that we're selecting, because when we do select really interesting materials, children can learn amazing things from those materials, and we hit on this one. We're thinking about child preferences. Why should we use child preferences? Because teachers work hard to develop lessons that individual children actively can be involved in the learning. And so even though we structure these lessons and we really think about all those things, some children are still going to struggle. But if we think about what are children truly interested in, we can accommodate the activities based on those individual interests. And that, of course, increases access, participation, and increased learning. In this video, two teachers are going to discuss how they use children's preferences to increase participation in a learning opportunity.
I think when we build on children's interests, then all that engagement is going to come along with it. And you can see when the kids are doing things that they enjoy and that they are interested in, it really helps them. So we try to find things and do things that they're engaged in, that they want to do. Like there's certain books that we did today, the kids asked for them. They really, really are interested in the books that we have. Muy bien.
There you go. We really look at what would be really naturalistic for the child to participate and, stay engaged in the activity, stay engaged with their peers, but at the same time work on the objective rather than doing it separately. What about the cow? Where should we put the cow? On top. I chose to work with Layla in the block area because it's an area that she's shown a lot of interest in. During choice time, she has self-elected to go to the block area for several days in a row and plays well there. She stays engaged for a long time and she plays with her peers. So it is obvious to me that that is something that is highly motivating for her. So I thought that it would be good to use her natural interest in the block area and the materials there to work on some things that she might not be as fluent in.
Carefully observe children's play and interactions with the physical environment and with their peers to determine what they enjoy most. Look beyond the obvious to see if there are more subtle but consistent themes in their actions, activities, and tendencies. Children stay engaged longer and are better able to take in and process new information when they are motivated, calm, and genuinely interested. So think about what makes a child smile. What does the child gravitate to when the child is given a choice? Who does the child choose to spend time with? When does the child seem most calm and attentive? To increase the child's participation, integrate the child's favorite objects, activities, and people. Favorite objects can be used to spark interest in an activity or to motivate a higher level of participation. This video will show how to put a favorite sticker on a pencil to help a girl with handwriting.
We had this one little girl and she had that grip, the palm grip, and it was just really affecting her handwriting and also her strength in handwriting, and you could tell she was kind of embarrassed. And so we picked a favorite sticker and we put it on the tip of the pencil just to encourage the tripod. And now she loves it. She searches out for pencils with stickers on them. So she does it, and then she'll get a teacher's attention to show that she's doing it right. She's excited, she's proud of herself. Her handwriting's also gotten way better. We had this one little girl and she had that.
Observe which activities the child chooses in his or her free time. Then consider how those activities can be used to increase the child's level of participation. Think about what activities are physically, do they like a physical activity or stationary activities? Does the child like noisy or quiet? Does the child like calming stimulation visually or visually stimulating? Is the child more social or more solitary? Let's listen to Dr. Gail Joseph tell a story of a teacher who uses a child's love for trains to motivate a higher level of social engagement with peers.
So we had a little guy in a classroom who had 0 social initiations during free choice time. And he never would go to the dramatic play area, which, as we know as teachers, is really where a lot of that interaction takes place. But what we did know about this little guy is that he loved trains. Trains were something he could spend a lot of time on. It was a topic he enjoyed. It was toys that he enjoyed. So trains were really his preference. And that's one modification we can use. It's called using a child's preference. It's a simple modification. So what this great teacher did was transform the dramatic play area into a train station one week. So instead of it being a kitchen that wasn't very attractive to this child, it became a train station. She let him be in charge of selling the train tickets. Well, all the children loved it. It was a great unit. And this child, as soon as we changed that into a train station, went from 0 time spent in dramatic play to 100% of his free choice time spent in play. So he went from 0 social initiations to 17 social initiations in one free play time because he was asking people if they wanted to buy a ticket to get on the train. So what a simple thing for that teacher to do that everyone enjoyed, that had a huge impact for that child.
People can also be highly motivating to children. Observe which people the child gravitates to, peers and adults. Sometimes just by their presence and modeling, a child can feel more excited about participating in a challenging tasks. These people can be teachers, teacher assistants, other school staff, children in the classroom, their peers, family members, and neighbors. In photo 1, a child tends to get frustrated while putting together interlocking pieces of a puzzle. The teacher arranges for a trusted peer to work alongside and encourage that child. In photo 2, a child is not using utensils to feed herself independently. So the accommodation is that the teacher asks her assistant, whom the child adores, to encourage and support the child. Minimize disruptions to others. These are some things to consider. Bigger and flashier is not always better. If the same effect can be gained from a toy activity or a preference that will minimize disruption, then choose the less intrusive option. Like think about the books that have all the sounds, or think about toys that have all the sounds. It's probably best to remove those toys with sounds so that children can produce the sounds and be in pretend play anyways. But sometimes those sounds and those gadgets can be loud and disruptive to others. Have materials readily available. Once a strategy is selected, it's more likely to be implemented when the materials have been prepared in advance and placed where they're most likely to be needed. Adjust as preferences change. Preferences do not necessarily stay the same. Continuing taking the time to observe the child's preferences and be open to making adjustments on the child's new interests. Be prepared for why. Some children might find it unfair that they do not have access to a toy or materials that another child is given. Take some time to think about how you and your team will respond to those questions. Possible responses would be give other children access to the same materials when you are comfortable giving them more choices and flexibility. Talk with the children about everyone's unique strengths, challenges, and needs. Explain that you're helping each one. But also remember that the perspective of the young child, it's very difficult for them to take perspective outside of themselves, especially if they're 3 or 4, and even for some 5-year-olds. So it may be important that you figure out how all children can experience the materials, especially if they are very provocative to gathering more interest of all the children. A curriculum accommodation is a small change that can promote big impact. Child preference is one of the 8 general types of curriculum accommodations. Strategies include identifying favorite objects, favorite activities, and favorite people. Don't forget that adapting the materials is also one way that we can give access and participation. Let's take now a look at supports. Having an adult to intervene and support the child's participation in learning is another way to provide an accommodation. In photo 1, a child who tends to stay quietly near the fence during outside time without engaging with peers can be helped by a teacher modeling in some fun games. In photo 2, a child who does not use many tools in the science corner is shown how to use a magnifying glass to examine bugs. The adult has brought materials into the floor level and sitting side by side rather than standing and looking down with the child. In photo 3, an adult is present to praise a child who independently transitions to go outside by lining up with her peers, a skill that is just emerging. Peer support. When we utilize peers to help children learn important objectives, we're utilizing peer support. In photo 1, a new child who is a dual language learner and rarely speaks during the class is paired with a peer who speaks the child's home language. In photo 2, a child who does not attend and follow the rules in circle time, such as raising her hand instead of calling out, is seated next to a model who has those strong skills. Photo 3, a child who does not know how to start a story activity in the listening center is paired with a child who knows how to go through those steps. Remember our visual schedule earlier that gave the directions. These are 2 ways to put different accommodation supports together. Finally, we have invisible supports. So purposefully arranging the naturally occurring events within the activities is an invisible support. So at circle time, in photo 1 and photo 2, children are first engaged in a quiet activity, and then with a couple of children quickly losing interest and engage in inappropriate behaviors, a movement activity is introduced. Alternating stationary and movement activities take place through this intentionally shortened circle time. So this invisible support is really responding to the naturally occurring events within the activity. The naturally occurring event was that children were getting wiggly and they were ready to move on. In our last photo, the students are making Play-Doh. A child has difficulty manipulating the material because it requires a lot of motor strength. The teacher arranges the students so that the child's turn to knead the Play-Doh takes place after most of the hand kneading has been done and the material is softened. Remember that curriculum accommodations are small changes that have a big impact on child engagement and learning.